Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Dick Deming. I'm medical director of MercyOne Cancer Center and founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our cancer education series. My guest tonight is Jake DeHaai. Jake is a cancer survivor. He's actually a survivor of pediatric cancer. We're going to learn a little bit about Jake's cancer journey and then the role that his cancer journey has played in illuminating the rest of his life. Jake grew up here in the Des Moines area, and he is currently an analyst for the United States Department of Homeland Security, and he's in D.C., and he's joining us from his home office in D.C. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so Jake and I have known each other for, about 6 years, maybe?
Yeah, I was 6 or 7.
Yeah, Jake has been active in Above and Beyond Cancer and has been on, I think, 3 of our overseas journeys where we take cancer survivors and caregivers on mind, body, spirit journeys. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But Jake, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about your cancer journey, how that began back at age 9. Jake's 28 now, and a little bit about when you were first informed
Yeah.
that you had cancer and how that journey played out.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, it kind of started at around age 9 to 10. I started to, as a kid, I was very active playing baseball, running around the yard, playing, shooting hoops, anything that a little kid would love to do. But I started having a problem where I couldn't breathe out of my nose. And both my parents had allergies. We were kind of, it was, I think, springtime. So we were just chalking it up to allergies. And then, as the baseball season started specifically, we would go on travel tournaments around the state of Iowa and be in the hotel rooms. And I think I started to keep my parents up and my sister up with all the snoring, and just like constant complaints of migraines and not being able to breathe out of my nose. And so went in to get tested and originally did some allergy testing, which was traumatic as a child, where they put the whole tray of shots on your back to see what you're allergic to. And I wasn't allergic to anything. And then went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor to get a CT scan, and they found a golf ball sized tumor that was in my left nasal cavity. So not visible, but kind of lodged back in there, which was the source of my inability to breathe.
And you're snoring.
And the snoring, yes. So my parents didn't have to sleep with a box fan for much longer but so we scheduled to get that removed, and that was, I was still in the summertime, and the surgery went really well. They were able to take the tumor, I think, cut it up a little bit, and then remove it out of my mouth through my sinus cavities. They didn't make any incision in my face. There's a small metal hook in there, and everything felt fine. I could breathe. It was exciting. I think I'd given my tumor a nickname of Bob, and we had a no more Bob party. And then at that moment in my life, I thought my time in the hospital, my surgery, I was kind of over and done with. So
So
yeah,
Jake, where did you have the surgery? Did you have it in Des Moines or did you have it at Iowa City?
I had it at Iowa City. So I had a lot of the testing done in Des Moines, and then they sent, when they found the tumor, sent me to Iowa City, and the surgery was done there.
And are these both photographs after the surgery?
No, so this is the one on the left is I think either right after that surgery, or the beginning of when I started treatment. So the one on the left, I am skinny, but I'm healthy. I look very healthy. A few weeks after that initial surgery, when I thought, I could go back to being a kid, I remember sitting in my room and my mom and dad coming in and saying, we're going to have to go back to the hospital for some more tests. And it kind of telling from the tone of their voice that there was something going on. And they had sent my tumor up to Mayo Clinic because it looked abnormal. And I remember going to the hospital where they essentially said that it was malignant. And now I didn't really know what that word meant since I was 10 at the time, but it I could tell from the look on my parents' faces that was not good news. And then I remember shortly after, or it might have been around the same time, we were at a Lutheran Bible camp up in Okoboji, and they held like a prayer circle for me, just for what was about to happen. And I remember seeing both my parents cry, which is difficult, right? You're a 10-year-old, 10-year-old kid and look up, see your dad crying. It's unnerving. So from an early on, I could
And
tell that.
and Jake, at that point, that was the summer between like 4th and 5th grade,
Yep,
or?
that was the summer between fourth and fifth grade.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then, yeah.
So let's stick with that for just a little bit, I know you were between 4th and 5th grade, and you may not
Yeah.
remember the details, but you heard the word malignant, and then it really sunk in when people are praying around you at summer camp before you get started on chemo. And do you have any other sort of memories of that being identifying as a cancer patient?
Oh, 100%. So initially, and you kind of showed the photo, and you can pull it back up. Uh, my baseball team and local friends, we shaved our heads proactively, knowing that chemo was what's happening, and you can see the date. It looks
So
like
before you even started the chemo, you and all your friends shaved
I
their.
shaved my head with my dad, and some members of my family, uncles, shaved their heads, and then the neighborhood, kids shaved their head, and then let's cut forward. That's really early on, start of my fifth grade year, and that's me shaving my fifth grade teacher's head. So the community was really impactful. I knew that there was something going on. I knew I was different. I was going through something, but initially it was met with a lot of support. People shaving. They had a whole head shaving party, and I never felt ostracized in that moment. Um, and Yeah, that made me feel pretty special.
Yeah. And then you got started with chemo. And did you have to go to Iowa City for the chemo?
I
And
did. I
was
went to I
and was done as an inpatient or as an outpatient?
inpatient. So I would go in, we'd go up early Friday, and then I would be in Iowa City until Monday if I was reacting well. And if it wasn't, then sometimes Tuesday morning, which meant that I was usually in class Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then uh, back up to Iowa City.
And how many weeks did that go on?
Um, it went on for almost a full year. I don't think it was every week, but I think it was around 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. I think that total was 18 treatments. Um, so 18 weeks of it, weekends of it.
Mhm.
And so there's me. I don't look very well. My sister's behind me. I reacted really, really bad to the very first week, very first treatment. I still have some memories of this where um, I remember what the hotel room looks like. I remember kind of going down and uh, waking up, and it would have been like 5 days later. And I was throwing up, and I remember asking my parents what day it was, and when they told me, I like broke down. And I think over that weekend, I lost somewhere from 20 to 30 pounds or something along those lines. And I got put on eating steroids pretty quickly. Got down to about 50 pounds, I think, as a 10-year-old. And so that was me. I do think that was shortly after that, or um, and then and you can go to the next one. Definitely got fattened up on some eating steroids, which
Wow.
certainly, the transformation is it's crazy, but I was in a spot, especially early on, where I needed them. Otherwise, my body was not reacting very well.
And Jake, what was the name of your tumor?
It was
I
a
mean,
chondroblastic osteosarcoma. But when you say me that, it's the childhood nickname I had of my tumor, which was Bob.
yes. Yeah.
Uh,
I realized as I was asking that,
yep,
so the nickname is Bob, but it's a
chondroblastic osteosarcoma.
and not a very common tumor. And back in when you were in fourth and fifth grade, probably I will refresh my memory. Were we Googling things back then? Were we?
Would have been 03, 04, 05.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
As a very bright fifth grader, were you going on the internet to learn about your tumor?
no, not really. My parents might have. I wasn't. I kind of
Mhm.
was taken word that it would told somebody had told me it was pretty rare. But I was more focused on trying to live my life as a fifth grader. So there's me with friends at the University of Iowa's dance marathon. Um, and I was trying to have as normal of a life as possible. I did not enjoy my treatment weekends. I wished I was anywhere else but those hotel rooms, hospital rooms. But you know, I didn't want it. I wouldn't want to worry on it because I just wanted to go through it. Right. I wanted it to be done and check the boxes and
What
get beat cancer was the mentality at the time.
What do you remember about how your family dealt with it while you were going through these 18 chemotherapy treatments over the course of a year?
Um, a lot. So my family was fantastic. They rallied around it, and for that year, it was very difficult. It was very difficult on my parents for sure. I don't, again, I kind of spoke to the community aspect of it earlier. It was thankful that I don't think my parents had to cook a meal on that whole year if they wanted to. I remember neighbors dropping stuff off, grandparents dropping food off. Um, and there was a huge support system. There was always a parent or a relative with me in the hospital room. One wasn't with me. They were with my sister, who also went through this journey too. Right,
Mhm.
she's a few years younger than me, and difficult probably for her to see her brother go through something like this, but also imagine very difficult. You know, most likely seeing a lot of attention being paid on one sibling and not the other. And so I think as any traumatic experience happens, family members find together and battle through it. But it's tough, and you know I think parts of our family are closer because of it. But I do think there's some things that, as with any family that goes through a traumatic event,
Mhm.
you still have to work through. Um, so I've certainly felt supported and loved, and so that was instrumental, I think. And so yeah, there's a photo of all of us. That's after when I was cleared and able to be done with treatment, and that was on our Make a Wish journey in Hawaii.
And was it about a year of chemotherapy?
Yeah,
So
so
all of fifth grade?
it was about all of fifth grade, and I was summer going into to sixth grade, I think is when, yeah, or early or late spring, I think is when I had my last chemotherapy treatment.
Refresh my memory. What's your sister's first name?
Sammy. So
Sammy.
that's
Yeah.
Sammy.
Yeah. So
Sh
you mentioned that obviously that whole year you were a major focus of the whole family and your parents, and that it would be natural that your younger sister might at times feel a little left out. Have you ever talked with Sammy
Oh,
about that as an adult and
yes.
kind of reminisce about what she went through and how that?
Yes, and I think it was very therapeutic, to have that conversation because going through that moment, I had blinders on, right? I was focused on trying to get through my cancer treatments. I was focused on trying to return to be a normal kid, and then when I got that chance, I tried to take it. I took it, and I know I don't think it was until recently, really, where I started to kind of come to grips with the fact that like other people viewed that differently. And so my sister and I are very close, and we've had countless of conversations about it. And her seeing that experience through my eyes and me seeing it through hers just, I think, provides some more clarity on that event. And again, like I said, with any major traumatic event, there's going to be great things that come from it, and there's going to be things that aren't so great. And it's about recognizing it and having those conversations, and then growing and moving forward.
How long did it take after you were done with your treatment before you felt like you were just a regular kid in the class, not the kid who had cancer?
Um, so as much as I love West Des Moines, which is where I grew up, I don't know if I ever got that feeling until I graduated high school and left. And even then, I went to Iowa State, so I didn't go too far initially. For a few years, I almost for a long while after, I was going for checkups either 4 times a year to every couple times a year to every year. Um, and so I felt better. I felt more normal, but I still knew, I was gonna have to tell my teacher that I was in the hospital, and probably have to tell them why. And they also probably saw when the Des Moines Register was at Westridge Elementary, when we had our head shaving party. So, you know, and a lot of my friends I kept, and a lot of people that I became friends with in high school and in college might have also heard the story. So it it's always been, I think, a part of my identity, like it or not. I think I tried to fight it a little bit initially, that I just didn't want to be known as the kid who has cancer, and no, I don't think any kid wants to be known as that. But um, I don't think it was until I put a lot more distance between you know West Des Moines and University of Iowa and myself, that I could feel that I was act autonomous of that experience. And even then, I don't know if I'm ever going to be acting autonomous of that experience, because
Hmm.
it was in such a pivotal moment of my life. You know, the fourth through starting with the symptoms in end of fourth grade up until almost sixth grade. It's prime developmental years.
So let's shift a little bit to now as an adult, or maybe back in college or graduate school. Um, as you matured and took more classes and kind of developed as an adult, young adult, when did you start contemplating what role your cancer journey may have had in influencing who you are today and what you are and where you are?
Yeah. Um, I think I started contemplating it initially shortly after, when I was kind of in middle school and high school. Um, it was a maturing moment. I saw some hard stuff. Spent a lot of time in a hospital, and so I certainly had a perspective, I think, on life and death that was different than other middle schoolers and high schoolers, um, and that really started to flesh out. I would say in college and then into graduate school, also coinciding with some of the above and beyond cancer trips that I went on. Um, but I realized that so many aspects of my personality were rooted from that experience. Um, I would say I don't wouldn't go far as to say I'm a type A person, but I've definitely driven to try to, like, get a lot done and focus and achieve things, which I with my life, which I think I can root a little bit in the fact that I had a near death experience as a child, and or just such a traumatic event where life didn't seem given. And I don't think, as a 10-year-old kid, you think about, what you want to be when you grow up, not if you're going to grow up. And so battling with that early, I think, put a different perspective on my life, that then as I, got older, traveled throughout the world a lot, got a really interesting perspective on just living life, and also some of the dark sides of having an experience at that age can do to your psyche, and just your outlook on life as well.
So the photo that we're seeing there is 2018, and
Yep.
that was when you were with Above and Beyond Cancer, when we did went to Tibet, and behind you, the snow-capped peak is Mount Kailash. Back to college, because I know you and I sat next to each other on a plane flying over to Nepal back in 2015, I think, was when you first went on one of our journeys, and I first got to know you. Tell us a little bit about what you majored in college, and did your cancer journey have any influence on what you majored in? And I know you did a lot of international travel during college, so maybe talk a little bit about your major and where
Yeah,
you went and how travel has played a role in influencing you.
certainly. One of the things that when I was going through my cancer journey, that I would do to pass the time would be my parents and I and my sister, when she was there, would go and we would rent a bunch of movies from the local library, and we'd watch movies. And it was kind of my escapism to see life beyond the walls of my hospital room. And I loved the adventure films. I loved the films where people are traveling and seeing new places, because in my mind, there were places that I still had yet to see and I wanted to go to. And that there was more in the world out there than where I was currently stuck. And it almost served as an escape for me. And so, fast forward to me getting older, and in college, decided to major in political science and international relations, with a large focus on uh, foreign affairs and international relations. And so, um, really in an attempt to kind of see how um, we impact the rest of the world, what else is in the rest of the world, right? That's not that we don't see just on the news or on our screens. And so that led me to studying Arabic, traveling and living abroad. I lived with a Moroccan family in Morocco for a summer. I lived in an apartment in Jordan the summer before I met you, um, and before we traveled to Nepal, and really got to see parts of the world that I never thought I would get to see. And I think that satisfied that was going to satisfy that drive that I had when I was a kid, of wanting to kind of seek the world and really, maximize each day if I could. Um, and it's taught me a lot. It certainly has. And I think one of the first things I realized was, no matter where you go in the world, there's we share more similarities and differences. There's people battling cancer all throughout the world. There's people who just want to, you know, make a living with their family. And that was one of the first, you know, I had really never left Iowa for an extended period of time before my travel to and living in Morocco. And it develops a sense of, I think, compassion, understanding, and peace a little bit, that there's good people everywhere, and there's beautiful places everywhere.
So, your family went through that year with you, and then then you're off to Morocco and Jordan. What does mom think about Jake going halfway around the world and
So
living in a country in the Middle East or
so
Northern Africa?
she visited me in the last week in Morocco and got to show her around. They were proud, I think. You know, very supportive. Uh, and I think ever since getting out of that hospital room, I always had, big dreams or things that I wanted to do. Um, so it was a step that I got to take and try to, experience life. And so I do remember we were in Jordan when I went to Jordan. I was living just in a apartment, and that was the summer of 2015. And Jordan is one of to its north and northeast border is Syria. And that was during the high points of the Syrian civil war. And I remember at I think it was my mom, somebody asked me how close the civil war was to Jordan. I said, "Oh, it's not that far. It's not that close. It's pretty far away." Um, which I was safe and felt very safe the whole time. But
Yeah, probably like Des Moines to Omaha.
sometimes you don't want to, you don't need to worry. I mean, it's to the point where you could die at any moment and doing anything. And so I think one thing that my experience has taught me is to try to seize those opportunities when you have them. Um, on the flip side of it, though, there's sometimes some anxiety around you not, are you missing out on opportunities? Are you missing out on, living your life? And I think more recently too, especially, there's been a fear I've got this second chance at life, from surviving my cancer journey. Am I living it up, or am I squandering it? And am I on the optimal path that I need to be on to make the most out of this gift? And on the surface, it seems a little ridiculous, but at times it is kind of, it eats at you a little bit, that this notion of living life to the fullest, or celebrating the second chance at life, has some downsides too, if you start to second guess yourself.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and that's probably a lifelong thing. Am I on the right path? And
Certainly.
uh, there's so
I'm
many
not I'm
different
certainly not the first
paths.
one that's ever thought that, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
but
No, no. One thing, would you describe yourself as a risk taker? As a always, even before your cancer, were you always adventuresome and outgoing and uh, 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 willing to take on new challenges?
I think so. I don't have a lot of like thinking before I went through my cancer journey. I don't know how well I could tell you about my
Yeah,
personality at the
yeah.
time.
That's fair. I mean, I
So
think
much of
back. I
my
think I became a person in fifth grade. I don't remember a lot before
so
fifth
much of
grade.
my personality, or when I think back on my childhood's dominated from that experience, and
Uh-huh.
even things after that experience, I don't remember as well as things during that experience for
Hmm.
sure. I think people would categorize me as somewhat of a risk taker. I think I'm fairly measured in the risks that I would take, but um, I certainly have like a keen for, I went skydiving with my sister and my mom. I've uh, done a ridiculous endurance, like an ultra marathon, and things that might not appeal to most people. But that's part of life, I
Hmm.
kind of want to experience as much as I can.
Right. But sort of controlled risk. I mean, was always thinking it through and with plans and
Certainly. Yeah.
yeah. What refresh my memory. How did you find out about Above and Beyond Cancer, and how did you happen to apply to do that first journey in 2015? I think you were just graduating from college, if I remember.
So I found out because, and he was in a photo, but we don't need to pull it back up. Nick Hinkle was a childhood friend of mine. Went to high school, went to college with him. He was in one of the photos earlier, of us at Dance Marathon. His then girlfriend, now wife, Blair Shireman, is Greg Shireman's daughter, who Greg Shireman is involved with. Yeah, so Nick is right to my left, standing a little behind me. Um, so when I got back from Jordan, starting the fall of my senior year, I think the Above and Beyond Cancer trip was to Machu Picchu that year, and Greg Sharman was on that trip, and so Blair had. I was living with Nick at the time, and Blair was telling me about it and about the experience. She pressured me to apply, and so I mean, it sounded kind of right up my alley, and I applied.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so obviously, when individuals, cancer survivors, go on an Above and Beyond Cancer trip, it's not just about the adventure. It's a lot of reflection about what was the role of cancer in your life, other cancer survivors, a lot of talking about the cancer journey and how that affected you. So we sort of I would maybe force is a little too strong of a word, but encourage a lot of reflection about the cancer journey and the role it plays in your life. Would you say that that trip and writing the application to be selected and being on that trip, did that bring your cancer journey back to life? Had you spent much time in high school or college thinking about it? Did you I know I remember sitting with you on the plane ride over to Nepal and kind of asking you to tell me your story. I don't know if that was something that brought up the memories or if it was all right there.
Kind of all right there. So the amount of introspection I think that happened at the first Above Me on Cancer trip to Nepal certainly wasn't at a level that I had really been doing. Uh, as through in high school and college, you meet people, become close friends with people, and I think it's still you tell your story, you at a certain level, right? So much of it still kind of guided some of my outlook on life. But it wasn't until that first trip when I really started to think about how is it still affecting me. I think a lot of it's been, or at the time was what happened to me, and now what am I doing because of it? Not how is it still affecting me? And it was still affecting me, and it still is still affecting me. And I think the first trip was a lot of clarity. And I remember breaking down and crying at one point during a prayer flag ceremony because the totality, I think, of the emotion I still had from that trip, the guilt that I had of knowing that, I survived and others didn't, all of it hit me, and it seemed like I had the benefit at the time because I was a child of viewing it as my experience that I had to get done, and then it got done, and then it was over, and of course, it was impactful, but that was it. I could shelve it away a little bit, and um, I think as I got older and I started to think and reflect on it more, I now view it as an experience that has impacted me, my family, and friends, and one that still has, and continues to, and probably will continue to.
So the second trip that you did with Above and Beyond Cancer was 2017 to the summit of Kilimanjaro. I think that's right.
Yep.
And that trip was they're all special. That trip had a lot of actually young guys in. We had a couple of college pre-med, one who was a cancer survivor and his brother. We had a medical student. We had a cancer researcher, young man who's a cancer survivor. So a lot of folks your age on that particular trip. You had already been on one Above and Beyond Cancer trip. You were kind of seasoned and helping with it, but there were more individuals your age who had also gone through it. Tell me a little bit about that particular trip and the influence of having others of a similar age that were cancer survivors that were still maybe facing this, gosh, am I really done with cancer? Am I cured? The role that it plays, and what was that interaction like?
It was. I think the first trip I was probably the youngest by at least 10 to 15 years. So it was fun to on the second trip to Kilimanjaro have a few individuals that are around my age. Some who were aware of my cancer story too, so that had grown up in the area, and it was great to have them and to talk through some of the struggles of not only journey with cancer, or those who are in pre-med preparing themselves to face something similar of treatment, or hearing from patients, but also at the cusp of life where we had graduated undergrad, and then going, so most of us, or if not all of us, to advanced education, but starting to talk about the roles that this experience, but cancer will provide in our life. And I think that forward looking approach was really helpful. But one of the things I remember most about that journey, among a lot of them, or a lot of things, is there was a few members of that on that trip, I think, that had incurable cancer, and were much older than us, and than me, and some of their advice, and just how they proceed to live their life with it, and was pretty eye opening to the extent that it defines their life more so probably than it defines mine, but using it as a way to celebrate your life and celebrate each day, instead of being annoyed that of any symptoms still may have, or they may have. And I think it's the perspective of seeing it on every journey. And when you talk with anybody who is a cancer survivor or whose life's been touched by cancer, there's an instant community. I think that people know what you're going through, and so having that community to talk with and to is very inspiring.
Yeah, it's very inspirational. You just hit it on the head. If you're 70 years old and have incurable cancer and still choose to put a mountain in your pathway,
Right.
with the suffering that comes with that, and to understand, really, to live with them, that avoiding suffering is not the purpose of life. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the last, go ahead, Jake.
Go ahead. I'll save it
Or-
for later.
I was going to lead this. So the picture that you have up there is that the only picture of the journeys? Is that one?
That's on, yeah, on
Yeah,
the
on
slide.
this deck. So Jake is also a fabulous photographer. So he is just takes these gorgeous, gorgeous photos. Could be a professional photographer, and we've used his photos in our books, and I just love it when he shares it. So this is one. Yeah, Jake, was this taken with your camera? Is this a selfie, or did you
N
have somebody
No,
click it with?
Dylan Huey,
This is
took this
Dylan's,
photo.
yeah.
Yeah.
So our professional photographers. So this is the journey to in Tibet. So maybe tell everybody a little bit about the journey, just physically. Where did we start? Where did we go? And then reflect a little bit on uh, what you learned about yourself on this journey.
Certainly. So we flew into Kathmandu, and then I remember I took a really small plane that was easily twice my age, uh, out of Kathmandu and up to Simikot, which is well, through another city and then up into Simikot in northwest Tibet, where we were going to start a journey hiking. Along a river up to the Tibetan and Nepalese
Yep.
border, and
And
then
Jake, you said Northwest Tibet, but you meant
or
Northwest
northwest Nepal.
Nepal. So we started, yep. So we got off the plane way up in Northwest Nepal, and we're going to travel by foot to cross the border into Tibet.
Yep.
Yep.
So the first part of that journey was just hiking in Nepal along a road that was also used by farmers and townspeople and monks and everything, and then we cross the river and then take a bus from there up to Lake Manasaravar and Kailash. Lake Manasaravar was a holy lake, and then started the Kora, which was the 3-day journey circumambulating Mount Kailash. That journey was really interesting for me. That was my first really time hiking in that part of the world and being in that part of the world for a significant amount of time beyond the 5 days that we spent in Nepal in 2015. And it was really impactful because I could start to see where my cancer journey was calling for me to go. And the way I put that, I guess, is just that I could kind of tell I was in a place that I was never going to be in again, probably, and experiencing something that those who travel and do the Kora, that follow one of the religions that find the mountain sacred, sometimes save up all of their a lot of money to go do, and it's a once in a lifetime thing. And I thought back to the kid in the hotel room that just wanted to get out and do it, or in the hospital room and do anything but continue to receive treatment. And there was a moment where I was helping Dylan at the time take some of the photos and do some videos for that trip, and I had hiked to the top of the Dromela Pass, which was the highest point anyone was going to get that trip, and I think it was around 19,000 feet, something along those lines. And I got to the top and I was waiting for people to come up, and I had this very quiet moment where there was prayer flags on the ground everywhere and the mountain. right there. And I felt a sense of acceptance and peace that it was a tough day of hiking. It was a tough day. We had gotten up at before sunrise, and it was a lot of people were having a lot of issues and feeling the altitude. And I got up to that point, and there's a calmness and an acceptance of that. Difficult things are worth doing sometimes because they teach you a lot about your perseverance in yourself and what you can accomplish. And the view at the top was great, but I remember thinking in this moment to turn around and start capturing photos and videos of the rest of the group that was coming up, and finding more joy in that than reaching this pinnacle of a mountain. Um, and I had made it. I was the first one to get up there, and what mattered more in that moment was experiencing the joy of everybody else come up and recognize it, and seeing them celebrate the hard achievement that they had done. And kind of meant a lot to me because it was a lot. It's more than just, you know, uh, doing difficult things for the sake of them being difficult, but doing them with people that you love, or fostering a community with a community where then the journey is just as impactful as the summit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think from that moment, trying to seek that out in life. I'm not going to be able to fly to a remote country and climb crazy mountains, especially not with a government salary. So, what? How do I experience that? And I think it's just building up the people around me when I can, and encouraging them to achieve and do amazing things, and being the first to celebrate them, but also being the first to sign up alongside them to do it with them.
Yeah. And it's always it always amazes me that the trips come off and we get over there and we do it and we get back and it's like, wow. We've had there's so many things that could possibly go wrong and they don't. And we come together as a group. This one, as you mentioned, and just to define a couple words, Kora refers to the complete circumambulation or going all the way around the mountain. So that mountain that you saw, that's snow covered, that looks like a pyramid. Um, no one has ever climbed it because it is so sacred, and it is a sacred mountain in 4 different religions, and you do a complete 360 around it, but you get up to 20,000 feet of elevation when you go around it. And the religions would say that if you go around it, a complete 360, you have completed a Korah, a very sacred act that absolves your sins for the lifetime. And we are there, as Westerners, but we are walking with individuals of Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and Bon religions that for them it is a very, very sacred space. So unlike sometimes where you might go hiking in Colorado and do some yipping and yelling along the way, I mean, this was a very sacred path. And I think we did a good job of familiarizing ourselves, not just with the mountain, not just with it, what does it take to get up there and complete it, but what does it mean? What did we learn about the other cultures, and what did we learn about ourselves in the process?
I agree, and I think what set it apart. I mean, the trek for up Kilimanjaro was beautiful, but you see the dedication of the people that are doing the Korah, that were raised and believe in any of the 4 religions you mentioned, but also seeing how it impacted the culture, how important it is. Um, it creates a sense of spirituality around the mountain and around the days that we were doing the Korah, that I think naturally causes introspection, and you to start to think about how you're there with them and interacting in this sacred space. And um, again, I think, like I mentioned, these trips have been fantastic for introspection, and as someone who went through the journey so long ago and at such a young age, I think um, those moments were incredibly impactful for me.
So I know that you do a lot of journaling and writing. Maybe I invite you to say what do you think? What have you learned about yourself, maybe on the journeys, maybe through the writing, through what you've lived? What are either lessons learned or changes you've made in your life because of what you've learned about yourself through the above and beyond cancer journeys?
Um, I'm pulling up what I've been writing on my recent reflections. Uh, During the journey, so I've found that that during the journey, I'm often too exhausted to be able to craft anything compelling or legible at times. But it's a lot of just trying to detail moments, experiences, and feelings that can then spark memories when I think back on it. I learned that I love the mountains and the outdoors and um, doing difficult multi-day hikes and things with people and having getting to talk with people who I might normally have never had the chance to interact and have a fellowship with outside of a journey like that. And it's from those conversations I think I've learned that my experience, and I think everyone, my experience with cancer allowed me to relate to everybody on those journeys, but at a higher level, the human experience I think unites us and allows us to be kind and have um, talk with people, and I think that that was interesting and helpful. I think for me to learn just how much we had in common and how much I could share and learn. And then after the fact about life, recognizing there's always moments in your life. Cancer is one of them. These journeys have been one. I've had multiple others that you don't I don't think you realize the impact that it has until you've able to step away and contemplate it and think about it. And I think the idea of living life to the fullest, um, that no day is guaranteed, but with the time that you do have, try to seize it and live it and make an impact in your community, but also with loved ones. I think that was an idea that was formed initially through my cancer journey and then fleshed out through a lot of my time with the above and beyond cancer and the idea that to wake up each day and with joy and be excited about what you can accomplish. I think now I'm not saying I do that every day. That's certainly not the case, but more often than not, striving to remember those experiences and using the knowledge in everyday life.
So, Jake, you're married. I was at your wedding, and the wedding was like 2 years ago.
Uh, 2021. Yep. So that was a year on June 5th
Just a
of this year.
year ago. So it's not
Yeah.
been quite a year. And lovely wife Bailey, who you knew and were in a relationship during the trip. My question is there any what was her thought of you going taking 3 weeks off without her to go to Tibet? And what's her view of above and beyond? And was there ever any was it all
She
positive?
she resents you. So I'm kidding.
She
Actually, no. So she's listening to this, and I'm
yeah.
gonna kill me for that joke. But no. The funny thing was that trip, the Tibet trip, that was 3 weeks. Was in I want to say late August to early September. We had done long distance for the majority of the time that I was doing grad school. Um, she was in Minnesota and I was out in Washington D.C. And we had just moved her across country out to D.C. in July. So she had visited D.C., had met friends out here, but not only was it a difficult trip to try to figure out the logistics of going across the world for 3 weeks and making that work, but she had been out in DC for 4 weeks, 6 weeks maybe, and I was about to leave for 3. And so she was very supportive. Obviously, we talked a little bit about me leaving so quickly, but she knew how much Above Beyond Cancer meant to me, and through that also how much it means to her, and she was very supportive, and I think was fantastic about all of it. And she's great. I love her. And I think she made a comment in the
There
chat
we go.
too.
Yeah, we got a picture of the two of you there.
She
Yeah.
said lies, so she does not resent you. But,
So, Jake, this is a question I ask many of my patients. I probably said it 5 times today. What has brought you the most joy in the last 3 months?
in the last 3 months, going through life with my wife, and then to an extension of that, loved ones, and just enjoying time with them.
So, what's your philosophy of life? What brings you joy in general? How do you put more joy into your days?
Finding more so than living life to the fullest, which I think can be a little grandiose at times. I think finding the moments that make me smile and laugh, and living in those a little bit, and then making time for the things that I love. So whether it's playing with my dog, and with Bailey, or going out for a run and getting sunlight, or just the outdoors. In those moments, I'm able to just kind of turn everything off and just exist, and go through life. And I think those what I most enjoy.
Great. Let's open up to questions. We've got a large live studio audience. Teresa is here and has a question for you. Do we have a microphone for Teresa? Here we go.
Hey, Jake. I'm glad you're here virtually, and really it's joyful to listen to you. So I love that you understand the metaphor. The journey has become more important than the summit, and you enjoy the community you're in, and as well as when you travel. So I know you and Bailey enjoy traveling. If you could pick a place to go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and enjoy that journey?
So I can tell you my answer is going to be different from Bailey's. So I'll give my answer, and then I'll give hers. I would love to go back to the mountains. So I would love to go hiking with her and with friends in the Patagonia areas of South America, somewhere I've never been. From these journeys, I really enjoy it. I love the difficulty of it, but the vast beauty that you see as well. And I think there's something almost very primal about it that just makes you realize how small you are, and that's comforting sometimes. I think Bailey would be 100% ready to do that too, but it's also been like very cold here, and I would assume she wouldn't say no to like a Mediterranean cruise or a trip to the Greek island or something. So I'll say both of those.
Okay. Other questions for Jake? Okay. So, Jake, you are in, we started off, you're an analyst at the United States Homeland Security. Does troubled times like we're going through, does that, how do you put that into perspective? I'm not asking you to analyze the current situation, but you can't live and listen to the news without feeling some fear, and I guess the bigger question is, does the life you've lived with the cancer journey and the adventures, how do you put in perspective the fears that we might experience from the world situation?
I think perspective is always important. And so my answer would be different for anybody here than it would be, I think, people who live in Eastern Europe or wherever there's problems in the world. I have said this a few times, but the thing of my journey and my travels have shown me how closer alike we are than we're not alike. I think all throughout our society, but many other societies, there's a lot of factors that are trying to push us apart. When in reality, we're not that far apart. And so finding the humanness of somebody, recognizing the joy that they have, and recognizing the importance of respecting them and caring for them on one hand. And then in terms of fear, sometimes it's very warranted, right? And in those moments of extreme fear, I would imagine the idea of kind of the mentality of I had, I think, when going through chemo and through my cancer journey was focus on what you can control, what I could control. Everything else is not in my hands, and so I don't want to waste my energy stressing about it, because I have no effect on that. If it is something in my control, then obviously to work towards that, and then overall, just life can end at any moment for anybody, really. I could get hit by a car walking across the street tomorrow. My cancer could come back. So enjoying the time that I do have and not worrying about, I think, things that are eye-popping or catch the headlines, and certainly take things seriously. But at the end of the day, I think I find myself too of stressing too much over things that I can't control, and it detracts from the joy that I can have in my life and in each day.
Yeah, great. Jake, we shared with each other, we both came across a poem kind of at the same time, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. Do you happen to have that at your fingertips?
No, not at my fingertips, but I imagine you do.
Yeah, I do. So we're gonna close with this because I think it talks about in times of despair and fear how we can get great solace from nature, and you mentioned that yourself. So we'll close with this poem that we both shared with each other about a year ago. It's The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry, and peace is Peace, the peace of wild things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. So thank you, Jake, for sharing that poem with me. Thanks for sharing your story with us tonight. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Please join us again next week. If you know someone who could benefit from watching this video podcast, or if you'd want to watch it again, this will be available tomorrow on demand at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and at the MercyOne Cancer Center website. Thanks again for joining us. Please join us again next week. Bye-bye.